probably not much practice about it.
Well, thank you for having us.
Bob Stinson is a board-certified forensic psychologist, attorney at law, and licensed independent chemical dependency counselor. Earned his Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Capital University and his Doctor of Psychology in Clinical Psychology from the University of Indianapolis.
I'm Bob Stinson. This is Dr. John Tilley. We appreciate you having us here today. We're looking forward to the presentation. So what stress is, it's basically a biological mechanism. It's built into our brains. It's why humans have survived over time. And it creates a physiological change in our bodies that alerts us that one of two things is going on. Either I've just been hurt or I'm about to be hurt. So you should know that in a conflict situation, a dispute resolution situation, for example, that the disputants in front of you, or litigants if you're going to a trial, for example, when they're feeling stress, they are already wired and triggered to believe that they've either been hurt or they're about ready to. Right? So as a part of the human stress response, the brain, within seconds of perceiving stress, starts releasing adrenaline. A good question would be, well, why do we care about adrenaline and cortisol? Because when you put adrenaline and cortisol in your body, you end up being more impulsive. Think about it. You're walking down the road, you're not very stressed out, a big dog comes and attacks you and latches onto your arm. What do? Well, you don't want a brain that says, well, let's sit here for a few minutes and contemplate the pros and cons of kicking this dog, right? You want adrenaline and cortisol to kick in so that you can immediately and impulsively respond to that dog bite. Get the dog off, push the dog off, run, whatever you need to do. Well, your disputants are having the same thing going on. They're coming in stressed out. They've got adrenaline being released. They got cortisol being released. They're going to act impulsively. Your job is to help them not be so stressed so that their brain is not releasing cortisol, adrenaline, and they're not making impulsive decisions. So we want you, for foundational purposes, to know what's going on physiologically and what's going on that's driving people's behaviors so that if you want to have an impact on their behavior, you know the multiple routes by which you can do that. You can influence the environment. You can influence their physiology by trying to calm them down, by taking breaks as necessary. You can influence their mood, their thinking. That'll all have an impact on their behavior. If you have never done this exercise before, we want you to listen carefully to the instructions and do as you're told.
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count?
How many passes did you count? Video before. Did you notice anything bizarre? Anything peculiar? If you saw something out of the ordinary, raise your hand. Less than half of you probably.
The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla?
Huh? Did you see the gorilla? How many people did not see a gorilla? Who can make sense of this? We're all intelligent adults. We just watched a video with a gorilla who walks in and pounds on his chest, and many of us didn't even see it.
Well, the instructions said count the passes.
Yes. Count the passes.
It didn't say watch for a gorilla.
It didn't say watch for a gorilla, did it? So what happened there?
The concentration was on the passes.
Yes, it primed us to be focused on one thing in particular. And they even primed us further by saying, count the passes of the people in the white. Another way of saying, block out anything that you see in black. And so that's what we call selective attention, which is a very good skill to have. So don't feel bad if you mastered that and didn't see the gorilla. We want to have good selective attention, right? If you're a student, you want to be able to study and listen to your professor without the person next to you bothering you. If you're sitting at the bus station, maybe you want to be able to read a book and not be distracted by passersby and be distracted by cars going by. So selective attention is a good skill for us to have. But it can also be a liability. If we're sitting at the bus stop reading our book and the bus pulls up and then pulls away without us, that's a problem. If we have disputants who come in and they're focused on one thing, we sometimes refer to, you can't see the forest for the trees. They're too focused on one thing. It can happen, can it? Right? And it can happen especially if they get primed in that direction. So we want you thinking about a couple of things that goes on in the brain. One is there's this priming process. So you want to be careful that you don't inadvertently prime them to be too selective in their attention. In fact, maybe you want to prime them to be open-minded about potential solutions or resolutions to the problem in front of them. Right? The other thing is we want you to know that it's probably not enough to just tell them they were too selective. Right? If I just told you, trust me, there was a gorilla, you would leave here saying, I'm not sure, I don't think there was a gorilla because I didn't see it. So you want to be able to show them the answer. Once you show them the answer, they're like, oh, of course there's a gorilla in the room. How could I have missed it? Right? So you might need to show them what their options are as it relates to problem solving, because the brain, once they're locked in, they're going to believe what they saw. Okay? So that's selective attention. Your disputants, probably your litigants, probably come in with very selective attention. Now, I also referenced this idea of what you see, you believe. Is that correct? Do we, for the most part, what we see, we believe? I'm going to do a little experiment, okay? See who that is, put a name to that person. All right, so you all did that. You know who this person is, right? Now, I want the people, maybe 3-4 rows back. I want you to look at this picture, all right? And I want somebody to tell me who it is that they're seeing. One of you back here, somebody tell me who this is you're seeing back there. Who does it look like?
Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe. Who did you see?
Einstein.
Albert Einstein. So she's telling me she saw Albert Einstein. You're telling me you saw Marilyn Monroe. We're in the same room. You're no more than 20 feet apart or so. You saw the exact same picture. How can it be that you saw Albert Einstein and you saw Marilyn Monroe? Here's the picture we were just looking at. People up close said that's Albert Einstein. People in the back said that's Marilyn Monroe. People in the back are probably still saying it's Marilyn Monroe. Right? And people up front are probably still thinking it could be Albert Einstein for you. All right? And so we want you to be aware of what's going on here. There's several, I think, psychological processes involved. One is our conviction and eyewitness testimony. If I would have said, you argue for why it's Albert Einstein, you argue for why it's Marilyn Monroe, I'll be a third-party neutral and we'll figure this out, you would have never agreed. You would have been convinced that each of you was correct. And we do that. We believe when we see something with our eyes that that it makes it more accurate. It must be because I saw it with my own eyes. Right? So we want you to know that, one, your mind can play tricks on you, both what you're seeing in your sessions when you're working with people and what your clients are bringing in. And we also want you to know that when they start referring to eyewitness, I saw it, this happened, that you might want to step back and be careful just how much weight you're giving that, because eyewitness testimony is not the strongest evidence out there. All right, juries give it a lot of weight. Judges, I think, give it a lot of weight. Third-party neutrals probably give it a lot of weight. But we want you to know that perspective can change everything. All right?
All right. So, question. Do people die more from motor vehicle accidents or from stomach cancer? The other question is, do people die more from shark attacks or from falling airplane parts? Studies will show that most people say accidents and shark attacks account for more deaths, but in reality it's stomach cancer and falling airplane parts. Question. I thought it was going to be shark attacks more. I didn't try to outthink the question. I just thought straight up it's going to be shark attacks. And I fell victim to this heuristic that I'm about to tell you about, the availability heuristic. And the reason why I fell victim to that is because I was more easily able to recall from memory someone dying from a shark attack. Right? Pretty sensational stuff. And I can't tell you one time I've heard of anybody falling from a falling airplane part. Right? But the point here is that we are often victim of our own thinking shortcuts, which we call heuristics. Heuristics are basically a shortcut for making to arriving at decisions. There's all different types of heuristics. The availability heuristic is one of them. This is when we tend to make judgments based on the information we're most easily able to retrieve from memory. Right?
The availability heuristic, that's the only case they know of. They know of one case where a lady got third-degree burns because a hot coffee spilled on her lap after going to McDonald's, and she got a $2.8 million award. So that's what they expect, because that's what's available to them. What they didn't know, and probably need to know, because you need to make this available to them so that their thinking shortcuts don't lead them in the wrong direction. What they need to know is the vast majority of hot coffee claims never get a dime because they're not worth anything. People coming to you are going to think this is a big money claim. All right?
Sure.
So your job then is to educate them, make more information available to them. We're not going to do away with the availability heuristic. It's here to stay. It's just how the brain works. It's how we think. You need to know that and guard against it by sharing more information with them.
2, availability heuristics. I run into this a lot with respect to the public. You know, we're forensic psychologists. When I tell people that, everyone automatically assumes, like, I go to crime scenes and all I evaluate are serial killers, right? So you spend
People think I evaluate dead people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they think they have this image, like I show up to a crime scene and like wearing sunglasses or something and take them off and like, this is clearly the work of a serial killer. And put them down and walk away, right? Well, I wish my job was that glamorous, right? All right. Another question. Is the average high temperature in Columbus higher or lower than 693 degrees Fahrenheit? Okay. Preposterous question. Yes, I will give you that. Okay, so then tell me, what is the average temperature?
And you all have to lock in an answer in your mind.
If you guess lower, great, you buck the trend. The research shows that the guesses, actually, in a question like this, the guesses tend to be higher than 63 degrees. So we know this to be true. This is a phenomenon that's known as anchoring. That estimates will be influenced, sometimes easily influenced, by numbers that are not necessarily relevant or even believable, like the 693 degrees Fahrenheit. There was a study that was done. Judges were asked to dismiss a case because it failed to meet a minimum jurisdictional requirement of $75,000 for damages in a diversity case. And the study found that those who considered the motion eventually awarded significantly less in damages than other judges who did not consider the motion. And the effect there was, by coming in with an inordinately low number, it ended up anchoring that judge's eventual decision, influencing it, keeping the number lower. So quite Machiavellian if you were hoping to get a lower estimate there, right?